Let's talk about the McCloskeys, because we talked a little bit about morality and how morality can change and, over time. And so I think that it kind of fits into the McCloskeys, because if you guys remember, that was the married couple. They're both lawyers that were at home having dinner on their patio with their daughter. BLM was going on in St. Louis. And so they were in a wealthier part of the suburbs of St. Louis. There was a BLM march that was headed for, I believe, the mayor's house. And there was a group of people that decided to take a detour. And they went into not just a neighborhood, but a gated neighborhood. It's a private neighborhood, and broke through certain gates so that they could go into the streets here of this neighborhood. Now, normally a street is it's public, right? Because it's like any kind of a normal avenue, a normal, main street or whatever. It's open to anyone. Anyone can technically be there. I mean, unless there's some sort of a curfew pandemic that is, whatever. Certain things that sometimes government officials try to enact, but whether they're legal or not is a whole other issue. But anyhow, so typically any sort of a street is going to be open to the public, but if it is a private neighborhood that is gated off, it is technically private property. So this group of people were on the street, but in a private neighborhood. And so the McCloskeys, they had their famous, photos of them. You can see they're on the thumbnail of them holding their firearms out at people, basically saying like, hey, don't come over here. There's been a lot of rioting and looting and whatnot going on, and don't you dare come onto our property, because we're ready to defend it, essentially. So they were criminally charged for that, and I believe they ended up pleading guilty, and then were pardoned by the governor because it was a state crime. So it was the governor who pardoned them. Now, because they are lawyers, their law licenses are under fire. So it was reported earlier this week that their licenses were initially suspended by the Missouri State Bar. But that they decided to not actually, they kind of walked back the suspension and put them on probation for a certain amount of time, at which point, assuming that they have no other issues, that they'll reinstate their licenses fully. So the way in which somebody's law license is suspended or they're put on probation is when they have a certain thing that they did that was wrong, that usually involves some element of moral turpitude. And that is the case in Missouri as well. So moral turpitude it's this term that comes up every once in a while, and it's so nebulous and so difficult. So the question here is whether or not that act of aiming their firearms in the direction of other people on their own property, whether or not that involves moral turpitude. What do you guys think?
No.
Point of well, it sounds like almost any crime would be considered moral turpitude, right?
That's the problem, is that like if you ask somebody, if you ask 50 different people, you might get 50 different answers based on which crimes involve moral turpitude and which ones do not. I mean, I was looking up some case law on this, and it's like it's so wishy-washy, right? Because it's like it seems like the best definition that I've been able to find is here. Actually, I'll share my screen here so that you guys can see what I'm looking at. All right. Okay. All right. So here from Cornell Law School, a phrase that describes wicked, deviant behavior constituting an immoral, unethical, or unjust departure from ordinary social standards such that it would shock a community. I mean, but that's like it. Even still, like that's so wishy-washy. Like what does that even mean, right?
I have no idea what that means.
Well, you know what? I'm assuming they're trying. Well, I'm assuming they're trying to go for like the federal rules of evidence when it comes to propensity evidence. Yeah. If you are convicted of fraud or something like that, that shows that you can use at any time, right, to show that the person's the ability to be truthful, right? So if I committed fraud or one of those type of crimes, but if I committed a simple assault, then you can't use that because that has no bearing on my ability to tell the truth. That just has about, so, this I think is just too broad in a sense because, the argument is every crime. Well, but no, but that's technically incorrect because the law is not a moral vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So committing a crime doesn't mean it's immoral. That just means it's unlawful. So
yeah, we talk about the difference between morality and legal all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's why like it's people have also talked recently about in the Joe Rogan situation about, his contract with Spotify might have a morality clause. So if there's a morality clause, it might involve some kind of a term like this, like moral turpitude. It's like, if that's the case, it could have a very broad definition that's just up for interpretation according to whom, right? Who? Spotify, Rogan? Who gets to decide that in that kind of a case? Unless they have it a bit more narrowly defined, like, okay, what kind of moral turpitude are we talking? Are we talking, like massive infidelity? Are we talking, racism? Are we talking, like what would we be talking about if there's like, moral turpitude? I think a lot of times, usually when lawyers get disbarred, usually it involves some kind of mishandling of funds. So there's some fraud or embezzlement. So like there's a certain deception that's involved in those kinds of crimes that lawyers typically get caught up in when they are disbarred. But so, you could say that deception is an element that could be in that category of moral turpitude. I think violence maybe would be another, like if there was a particularly violent crime.
Possibly, because then it all depends on whether it was spontaneous, whether it was planned, that type of thing. It seems to me the thing with the ethics rules is that there's also that catch-all about bringing what's it called, shame to the profession. Right. And I think this what this moral turpitude goes to. They were essentially charged with simple misdemeanor assault, but the context in which that assault occurred, they're trying to say they're racist. Right now, they obviously weren't racist. You got a whole bunch of people coming onto your property, breaking the gate down, and they come out with guns and like, get the hell off my property. That's not racist, right? There could have been a whole bunch of white people out there. So it's not, they were selling it as racism, but it wasn't racism. I do think though that I think that when you go back to their issue, it seems like the state bar is saying because this was that type of issue, this type of newsworthy issue, then we're going to suspend you because you're bringing this negative attention or negative light to lawyers in this profession, and that's what may have gotten them caught up. So it sucks because some people say, well, that's not fair. Well, the problem is that your law license is not a right. It's a privilege. True. It's a privilege to have and the rules around it, even though they have to give you due process, the rules around it is very is unique in the sense of, we don't have to commit any crimes to lose our law license, right? There are a lot of things that are a lot less than crimes that we can lose for even things we say. I can say some things right now, and my law license could be in jeopardy. So it's that type of thing where you're not representing only yourself, but also the profession in a certain way.
That's true. If we want, we can add a little bit more nuance even. So this is from a federal court in Pennsylvania, United States v. Zimmerman, where they kind of go through, I mean, it's from like 1945, where they go through moral turpitude. But like one of the things that they said is that, let's see here. The authorities are in agreement, however, that moral turpitude is evidenced by an act of baseness, vileness, or depravity in the private and social duties, which according to the accepted standards of the time, a man owes to his fellow man or to society in general. It has been said that moral turpitude implies something immoral in itself, regardless of the fact whether it is punishable by law. The doing of the act itself and not its prohibition by statute fixes the moral turpitude.
Okay. So Adele saying, I am a she would lose her law license. based on today's standards, right? It's outrage.
It's so
It's
scary.
immoral.
It's so scary. The idea that I could lose my both of my law licenses, because it's like once you lose one, you can lose whatever
they're
other
all
ones you
gone.
have, because they all kind of connect together. So yeah, it's that's the weird
in
part.
California and DC. Oh yeah, you're screwed.
Well, you got to report to whatever. If you get hit in one jurisdiction, you got to report to the other jurisdiction. So you got no choice.
Sure. So
You get
interesting.
licensed
So
in Utah or something, they won't give us reciprocal discipline.
So I don't.
Oh, no?
Yeah, I don't know that I would. I was really trying to think on this case with the McCloskeys. I don't know that's a situation that involves moral turpitude.
No, of course it's not. But the fact of the matter is that they're going to say, well, today's times, BLM, you're white people, you got guns, you're
It's the state of
racist. Missouri. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're taking a hit.
Yeah, I think probably. So so the reporting that I saw, this there was a statement that they made that they were like, we're going to go along with the probation or whatever. Like we'll play nice kind of, but they were like, but we also think that this was not moral turpitude.
Of course
and
not.
I think I agree, because it just seems like, I don't know. Like if this involves moral turpitude, almost every single crime involves moral turpitude. Like there wasn't even any physical harm to anyone. It was technically an assault, right? It wasn't a touching. It wasn't a battery. It was they created fear, apprehension of a particular.
It's happening.
Yeah,
just so people know,
is assault.
No, because some states, like here in New York, we don't have battery, so everything is an assault. So the way some states, like Minnesota, even does this too. The way we separate between assault fear and we call one assault harm. So assault fear is I point a gun at you.
Okay,
I have assaulted you. Assault fear, and assault harm is I shoot you. Then that's harm,
because you have an actual
and you can have both
harm.
Yeah, but then you can have both. You be charged with one, I pointed the gun at you, assault fear, and then if I shoot you and harm you, then you got assault harm. So you'll see them stack like that.
Interesting. Brooke Cormier wants to know, does accepting a pardon constitute an admission of guilt? If it does, did their admission screw them out of a career? So their pardon. So in order to be pardoned, you have to be somehow convicted.
No.
So I think. What?
That's not accurate. That's not accurate.
No. Oh, I'm wrong.
No.
Okay.
Well, at least in the federal rules, federal rules, you can pardon them anytime. They don't even have to be charged.
The Confederacy, for instance, the Confederacy was the Confederacy. All the Confederate soldiers were mass pardoned, and none of them were ever charged.
Okay. I see. Okay, because I thought that was why they pled guilty in this case, was because they knew that the governor was going to pardon them.
The state rules are different. So the state rules, some states demand that you are convicted before you're pardoned. So I think that in that state they had to be convicted before they were pardoned. But in the Fed, the president can pardon you for crimes that you haven't been charged with as of yet. It happens all the time. It didn't happen with Trump. There were a couple of people Trump pardoned who hadn't committed any crimes as of yet.
Okay. So then, all right. So then my answer was going to be like, there just was a natural progression. So somebody was already convicted if they were pardoned. But so then does accepting a pardon constitute an admission of guilt? I don't think so. I don't think
there is one U.S. Supreme Court case which kind of says it in dicta, that acceptance of a pardon is acceptance of guilt. I'm not sure they actually meant that when they wrote it, but there is one U.S. Supreme Court case that, at least on its own plain terms, says it. But yeah, I don't really buy the concept. I think it's more accurate to say that by accepting a pardon, you accept that the implication you might be guilty rather than the fact of guilt, because only a guilty person would accept a pardon, kind of thing. But either way, there is a sentence from the Supreme Court that says apparently yes.
Yeah,
so
sounds like
okay.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because it seems like there are many ways that an innocent person can still be convicted, right? Or a not guilty person can still be wrongfully convicted. It's happened many times before, right? So so if you're like, I know I'm innocent, but I also know that the evidence that's out there is thin or something, or the evidence that supports my case is thin. I don't know. I feel like even if you're innocent, you can accept a pardon.
Yeah, somebody was asking
that's me talking
about
as a lawyer.
Someone was asking about Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon is a good example because he was charged on the We Build the Wall scandal, and then Trump pardoned him, but he hadn't been convicted. They hadn't even gone to trial as of yet. So, yeah, you can definitely pardon people without it.